The Devil All the Time is directed by Antonio Campos and stars the likes of Tom Holland, Robert Pattinson, Bill Skarsgard, Hayley Bennett, Jason Clarke, and Sebastian Stan, just to name a few. There are a lot of big names in this movie, and that is literally just scratching the surface. The movie focuses on a series of deceptive and corrupt characters in rural Ohio between the end of World War II and the start of the Vietnam War, and how their paths continuously cross over with each other, and how that leads to some very dark consequences. From the moment I saw the first trailer for this movie, I was instantly hooked. I mean, the cast mainly had something to do with that, but even the premise had me intrigued. I genuinely find that period of time between the late 40s and the mid-60s going into the 70s, I find that period of time very fascinating. And the fact that it was focusing on a very specific part of America and showing how devious and dark and corrupt some of these people would be during that time period, I thought was quite interesting, and I was interested to see how the movie would delve into that. And I've got to say, after watching this movie, I was not disappointed. I really, really enjoyed this movie, probably a lot more than the majority of people will be with this film, because from what I've seen, the general consensus for this movie is that a lot of people seem to think it's decent at best, and that I know a lot of people will be turned away by how dark and disturbing this film can get. But trust me when I say I had a blast with this movie, and to be honest, the whole dark nature of the movie just made it even better, in my opinion. I will get around to explaining that, but I loved almost everything about this film. Obviously, the cast are all brilliant. I mean, it should be considering who is in it. And it is really hard to try and pick out a bad performance in this movie because everyone brings their A game, and because there are so many great actors in this film, all giving fantastic performances, it is very hard to even pick out a bad performance from that selection. But what I can do is pick out some of my favourite performances. Obviously, Robert Pattinson, even though he's only in this movie for less time than you probably initially think he is, because he is slapped all over the posters and in the trailer, so you probably think he has a bit more of a prominent role in the film, but actually he doesn't have that much to do in the movie. But what he does offer in this film is brilliant. And I'm just going to say it, with the likes of Good Time, The Lighthouse, Tenet, and now this, I can say very clearly that I think Robert Pattinson is very quickly become one of my favourite actors working today. He just tops himself with every single performance he does, and this one is just another great performance to add to that back catalogue of great performances. Tom Holland was also really good as, I guess, the movie's main character. I wouldn't necessarily call him the film's main protagonist, but the movie does focus on him a lot more than, say, some of the other characters, therefore kind of making him, to an extent, the main focus of the film. And he is really good in this movie. He's really delving into some areas I've never seen him tackle before as an actor. And I really liked what I saw from him in this movie. Bill Skarsgard as well. Really, really good. Again, doesn't get as much screen time as you would initially think, but for what time he is given in the movie, he is fantastic. Riley Keough, brilliant as always. Again, she doesn't get much screen time either, but she is really good and effective in what scene she is in. Also, a performance that came out of absolute nowhere. Harry Melling, who most of you will probably recognise as Dudley Dursley from the Harry Potter movies. He is fantastic in this movie. He gets a very prominent role near the start of the movie. And he absolutely 110% commits to his performance. And I genuinely did not see Dudley anymore. With movies like this and The Ballad of Buster Scruggs, he is really proving himself to be one hell of a committed and pretty damn fantastic actor. However, there were a lot of other things I liked about this movie other than the cast. I thought the tone was just right. From the moment the movie starts, you get this very unsettling and slightly ominous feel from the movie, and it pretty much holds on to that throughout its entire 2 hour and 18-minute runtime. And I thought the tone was just right and worked really well for the sake of the movie. It is complemented very well by a brilliant score that never felt repetitive and never outstayed its welcome. And I really like the score for this movie as well. And one thing I did also like about this movie is that despite how dark and intense it is, especially on its surface, and how the tone of the movie can feel throughout almost all of its runtime, it manages to also make way for some very darkly comedic moments. There is a moment near the start of the movie where I didn't quite know whether to laugh or be shocked, and I love it when a movie is able to do that, especially considering how dark the overall tone of this film is. The fact that it was able to squeeze in some very darkly comedic moments, I thought was genuinely quite brilliant. I also thought the pacing of the movie was just right. I personally thought it never felt sluggish at all. I thought it was just the right pace to fully soak everything in as it was happening. And when the movie needs to pick up the pace a little bit, it does so, whether it's for intensity's sake or just to keep you as an audience member engaged. It does know specific moments when to kind of speed up just a little bit and then go back to that methodical pace that it has been maintaining throughout the rest of the film. The pacing I thought was fantastic, and also the way the movie interweaves all these characters' stories together. That was the one thing that I guess was kind of worrying me going into the film, because when a movie tackles so many characters all at once and tries to interweave them, you kind of get two things, well, at least I do anyway, I get two things worrying going around in my head. I get one is it's either just going to be a copy of Pulp Fiction, or two, it's not going to be able to handle all these stories and characters all at once. But this movie does it very well and actually executes it in a fairly seamless way, whereby when two stories end up crossing over, you kind of don't realise it's happened because it's flowed so seamlessly between scenes. I can understand why it might not work for some people and may appear clunky for some others, but for me personally, I thought the way these stories interwove with one another, mixed with the pacing of the movie, I thought worked really well, and I was genuinely engaged throughout the entire movie. I was not bored a single second of this film. In terms of issues with the movie, I don't have any glaring problems per se at this point in time. I suppose one nitpick I do have is that a few of the storylines do get wrapped up fairly quickly, considering how much time you're given with some of them, and especially the build-up and anticipation built up with some of the storylines. The way some of them just finish can feel a tad anticlimactic and feel like they're over too soon, but to me that's just a bit of a nitpick considering how well executed everything else was. An issue that some other people might have with the movie, but personally I didn't have, is that I feel like this movie is not going to be for everyone. A lot of people are going to be drawn in by the brilliant cast on show, but I feel like the pacing and the content of the film itself, considering the themes that it tackles and how dark this movie can get at times, is not going to be everyone's cup of tea and is going to put some people off. Overall though, I genuinely enjoyed myself with The Devil All the Time. I thought it was really well acted, really well shot. Almost every element that they brought together to make this film is very ambitious, and I think for the majority of the movie's runtime it does pay off very well, though it can be a little bit rough around the edges in terms of the way it concludes some of the characters' stories. But overall, I really enjoyed this movie, probably a lot more than some people are at the moment, which is why I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. Yeah, I've been giving a lot of 8s out recently. I need to try and find some movies that, you know, really deserve the 9s and 10s. But yeah, this movie's really good. Check it out. It's on Netflix. And see if it's for you. So guys, that's my review of The Devil All the Time. I hope you enjoyed it. If you liked the video, then give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Bye.